So, and so it's my pleasure to be here with Chris Mannino, the author of a great book called Making It Up. And you can see it on my back wall there too. And as a psychologist, I have to tell you, I was thrilled to read this book because I got into psychology when I was interested in play therapy way back when. And anything that
Perfect.
has to do with children being developmental issues with them or just natural development through play, I'm on board. So bravo to you. Bravo to you.
Thank you.
So, how did you come up with making it up? Because your background, I was reading, you're a former actor. You've done, I guess, improv. You're a teacher and you're a parent. So, I have a feeling that combination brought you to this. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Sure. And thank you so much for having me here, Louise. And I got my copy of the book too,
Yay.
obviously. And a big thank you to Familius real quick too, because this looks beautiful. I've had other books, but they did such a good job of just the look and the illustrations, really like that. But how did I come to this journey is twofold. And the initial moment that this really happened, so like many parents of this age, I'm a big fan of the show Bluey, which is this popular show about animated dogs out of Australia. And I mean, I really love the show, and I was in a bunch of fan groups. And a little over 3 years ago, all the fan groups suddenly kind of lit up and were really talking because this mother had gone on one of the publications, and to be honest, I can't even remember what magazine it was, but it was going viral, where she was just complaining that Bluey was completely unrealistic and kids shouldn't even watch it. Like it had set the bar too high for families, and so it made her mad. And so all the fan groups started talking. And I was sharing this with my wife. And we had already discussed that one of the unique things about Bluey that nobody really noticed is that almost every single episode is just a long improvisation. That's the format of the show, and people didn't
Okay.
necessarily know that. And so we were kind of chatting, and my wife looks me right in the eyes and it's like, well, A, nobody has your theater background. B, nobody parents the way you do. So C, to people, a lot of people, this probably is impossible, Chris. You're a writer, write this book. She just looked at me in the eyes like, you're a writer, make this a book. And so
Isn't
that's how
that
the book,
fascinating?
yeah, so that's how the book actually starts. As for the parenting method, so as I was drafting, I was realizing that yes, it is my background, and my background is in theater education. I actually happen to be wearing my Oxford sweatshirt purely by coincidence. I was
But
not
I love
planning
it.
to.
I love it. So great.
Um, but this is New College, Oxford. They're called New because they're only like the third oldest school in Oxford. But anyway, um, but so I had this theater education background, and then I had left teaching, full-time teaching, when our son was in daycare, and I was having panic attacks. And at the time, I was in this wonderful theater program. I was teaching about 12 hours a day. We did 5 shows a year, plus a separate improv team that performed 4 times a year. So I was doing 12 hours a day, five, sometimes 6 days a week, all for half the pay my wife was making at her job. And so we were like, well, one of us should stay home. And, even though it's rare for the dad, it's getting a little more common. That was the beginning of my time as a stay-at-home dad. So you throw all this theater education background in, all the acting and directing and so on. Then I spent 7 years as a dad. And then the third thing that really hits it, and what I recognized as I was writing the book and working with my editor and drafting it, I realized my parenting really, really solidified the most in the pandemic because the
Oh.
pandemic was a surreal time. And we had just enrolled our son in a Montessori school, and of course, that was gone. Then we're suddenly being asked to homeschool, and then we're being asked to not leave the house, not contact people. I mean, everybody remembers how dystopian it was, for lack of a better word. And we had just had a baby girl, like she was kind of born into all of this, my daughter, so she was a baby. And so it was a really, really transformational time, I will say, for me as a parent, because I was dealing with all of this existential dread and this, oh my God, like, is the world literally ending? What is happening?
Hmm.
And here is this. this kid who, and I've had all these wonderful moments with him, but suddenly he's at home when I wasn't expecting him to be. And suddenly I've got to up my parenting game. That's where the method really takes shape.
So let's
And that's
talk
how
a
it
little
starts.
bit about those fun methods. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I like to say is when you're working with people that, whether they're little toddlers or preschoolers or young kids or they're elderly or anyone in between, sometimes you have to use the power of yes. And
Mm.
that's where you don't get into an argument, you just agree because it's presented to you in the moment. And I love how you say yes is the promise of acceptance. And that is one of the techniques that you like to use. You talk about turning off screen time and minimizing distraction when you're a parent and you're in the present moment with your child. I loved your theories. I love that you actually tell parents, put down the phone because this moment's not coming back again.
Oh,
And
100%. Yeah.
and so enjoy your child, even if it's for 10 minutes a day,
Mm.
which was amazing because parents think if they have to sit and play with their child, it's hours. And they don't. 10 minutes, 15 minutes is really putting, I think, ingraining in the child how invested the parent is in their world. Yeah, so,
Sure, sure.
Chris, can you just explain what yes is when you are discussing it and making it up?
The basic rule of improv that everybody knows when they think of improv is yes and. But when you take that into parenting, it becomes deeply powerful. You are accepting who a child is. You are accepting their ideas. You are accepting their creativity. You are accepting that you are there with them. And that which is honestly hard for a lot of starting actors or starting parents to learn. It's actually a separate concept, but that
Mhm.
building upon their ideas, they're offering your own. To do that, you have to be present. You have to be actively listening. You have to be engaged. You have to be in the moment. And this is one of the most powerful things you can do to really shape your relationship with your kid. I think it's absolutely critical and thoroughly powerful and meaningful.
When you talk about like things you could do, like tea parties and being creative and building forts and all those things, I think of how I was raised in a time where we didn't have a lot of toys. You had to be creative. You had to go outside and make, a fort outside out of whatever you found, chairs or spare pieces of wood or whatever. And now we sort of give these kids these kits, already made, like pretend kits. That's not what pretend is, so.
It's a harder, in some ways, the world is constantly making it a little trickier. Like a lot of the stuff that we do to make things easier, and I'm intentionally quoting that, really do change the dynamic and take away a lot of the natural stuff that would be there. And it's not just the screens and the tablets. I mean, now we're in an age where parents are going right to AI for tips or are going to social media, and it is a different world even than 5 years ago. Like the world is moving really, really fast and changing really fast. And there's always something new and there's always something
Right.
happening. But to kind of take that all the way, I mean, you mentioned the tea parties. I was just at an interview yesterday or the day before. Tea party is my classic training wheel example because, and it's a really good one for people who are new to this or are unsure, because it's such a familiar example. Whether, you're just setting it up, you can do that. That's great. But once you get used to it, you don't even need any of that. Earlier today, my daughter and me, just her and I, we had to go through the whole airport. We went through getting our bags ready, getting in the car, going through airport screening. We went to London. We stayed there. Well, we had a really long airplane ride. Then we stayed in London for 6 days. Then she decided to extend our trip and we went to France. This went
Nice.
on. This was about an hour and a half. And of course, none of this really happened. This was just in the kitchen.
But I
It was
like the
not
vision
a
though.
real actual trip to London and France. But again, the only prop we used was a chair. And I'm not saying like you have to get to that like hour and a half type of thing. 10 minutes is great, but you don't need anything. You don't need anything to make this work. What you need is that yes and mentality. I give you a bunch of other tools from theater. And then I use this other pillar, which I'm really, really proud of. The other pillar, the anchor, in the second half of the book, has really, I think, is really different, has not been explored because it's actually method acting, what most people think of as method acting. But I've sort of transformed it because I recognized this was something I was using. It's
Right.
an emotional regulation technique. Well, and I went back to the pandemic. How did I do that? How did I get through that? And I started realizing I had fallen back on my actor training without really thinking about it. And
Mm-hmm.
once I started analyzing what was going on in my own thought process, I was like, oh, wait, this is what I'm doing. Could I teach that to other people? So you put that all together, and yeah, it can be really neat.
Saw you at TEDx on your TEDx. And I'm going to quote a few things you said there. You gave an amazing example about Yoda. Do you remember that example? Because that really
Don't remember
resonated.
exactly what I said. Remind me.
Okay. So you did a great accent and you were talking about the storm of stress and anxiety and the transitions of your career, but also that you should not be thinking of you should be wanting to have the power to pivot and that we are all time
Oh, the
traveling.
speech Yoda gives to Luke, always your
Yes.
mind on something else, never on where you are, what you are doing.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah,
I
and that's
just
so true in play.
I just love that because it was a very creative quote, and it was a creative way to bring in Yoda to a TEDx. And for one who watches a lot of TEDx and has been to several, I just really thought you did a great job there bringing
Oh,
in a
thank
very
you.
familiar character with your acting and your theater background, and then applying it to a real life example or examples of what you're trying to portray with your making it up and your philosophy here about play. And I just was like, kudos to you for being so good at that with your speaking ability and engaging the audience. So that was, I just had to bring that up. I wrote it down to make sure to, and the
Thank you.
accent was
Thank you.
spot on, by the way. Very good. So for those who didn't see
I
it,
do easily at times.
yeah, there you go. I was going to say you did a great accent for Yoda, but you did it right here. Fabulous. Um, so then go ahead and tell us about the anchor. Now, I really do want to
So,
hear
so
that.
the anchor. So when you're in actor training, for lack of a better term, when you're learning to become an actor, there are all these different methods and whatever. But what's commonly called method acting is this thing by this guy Stanislavski 100 years ago, and it's his idea is basically that to portray emotions on stage, whether you're on screen or on stage, you have to tap into a memory of a time you felt that yourself. That's the basic, dumbed down version of that idea.
Right.
And what I realized is this is actually what I was starting to do as a parent, again, to go back to that pandemic. And I started thinking about that more. And so, what the anchor is it trains you to focus on a recent memory that
Okay.
really, really happened. And if you do, I actually have a whole video course that goes with the book now. And this is one of the videos that I love the most because I walk you through building two separate anchors. We do a really slow guided meditation. It's really nice, but I never do anything, whether it's an interview on Zoom or it's going out with my son earlier today. I don't
Mhm.
do anything without an anchor. Like I really use this myself. And the people who I've worked with, who have used this, a lot of people have said this is one of the most useful and powerful things that they do every day. Even the people who do the 10 minutes a day with the kids, there's going to be a time where, you know what, we took a couple days off, we did something else, that's fine. They tell me they still use their anchor every day. So what it is
Right.
again is you have a memory from the recent past. I like to say it's no more than a month old that really happened to you that brought you intense joy.
Mhm.
And anytime you start to feel overwhelmed, whether it's politics or job or news or whatever, it's a crazy world out there, right? And so anytime your head starts to go into that space of, oh my God, just like in the pandemic, oh my God, what do we do? I can't even go to the grocery store without masking up and waiting in line. And, you know, how do you deal with that mentally? And it's the same way, if you're in Romeo and Juliet, the same way you pretend to be in love with Juliet when you're not actually in love with her is
Hmm.
you think of a time when you were really feeling love. It's that same
Wow.
exact technique. So for me, to give a really practical example, right now, today, we were in Munich in real life, not in pretend. We were in Munich not too long ago, and we went to the Hellbrunn Zoo, which is a lovely zoo in Munich. My son is very big into animals. Excuse me. So we always go, and if there's a nice accredited zoo, we always go check out the zoo. And on one corner of the zoo, there are three polar bears. And I got to tell you, we've been to a lot of zoos and done a lot of animal things, but we had never seen live polar bears before. And they're really cool. They're huge, and it was this beautiful enclosure, and they were happy. And I picture this moment walking up to those polar bears with my son, and his whole face just lit up. I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing
Oh.
ever. That's my anchor right now. So if I start to feel stressed, I mentally pivot my attention right there. I remember how wonderful that felt, how proud I was to give him this experience, how joyful it was, how neat it was. I mean, it was neat for me too. And so I just tap into all of these emotions and I feel calm. It's the same psychology on a different level as that whole study recently, where if you fake a smile enough times, you start feeling happier. And I love that. And it's weird and it's crazy, but it works. It's the same thing. If you force your mental state into that positive place. Now, I'm not saying don't deal with all the crazy stuff. I'm definitely not,
Right.
deal with it if you need to. But when you're in that time with your kids and you need to focus and you need to be present, that's when the anchor
Hmm.
really comes into power because you can't, like Yoda says, you can't have your mind on what you used to be doing or what you're going to be doing next or what's going on around you. You're focused on the kid right there
Right.
in that moment, or you're not actively engaged. And I do want to mention, as I said, there is a course too. So if you're interested, in fact, if you sign up for the course, you get a free book, the ebook. But it is a neat course. Spent 3 months making that is really cool. And the book is, yeah, it is really wonderful. It has so much actionable stuff. It will help people. I
And
am
I'm
I
going to
am
put
really
all
proud of it.
your digits, like your social handles and your website. That's all going to be added to this. And I thank you so much, Chris. Don't log off because we're going to do a little promo for something else in a minute. But thank you, everybody. This is Chris Mannino. The book is Making It Up. He is full of tons of pearls of wisdom. And like I said, if I walk away from reading a book, like this and get one or two sound bites, then I think, oh, that's pretty good. But this one, you can make lists. There is so much great content in it. And as a parent, as a
Thank you.
psychologist, as an educator, two thumbs up. Thank you
Thank you
very,
so
very
much.
much.